Welcome to FS Brew. FS Brew is the region's first podcast focusing on all things insurance and insurtech in the UAE and the broader Middle East. I'm Renjit Philip. I'm a partner in a boutique consulting firm that works on mergers and acquisitions and AI consulting for mid-sized companies.
Hi, I'm Vidya. I'm the founder of Forward, a startup that works with insurance companies to build their go-to-market digital propositions. In this episode, we catch up with Neeraj Gupta again. He comes on to our podcast for the second time. He is the CEO of Policy Bazaar UAE. I hope you guys enjoy listening in.
Absolutely. This should be a fun one.
It's so good to have you back with us. Welcome back to FS Brew.
Thanks, Vidya. Thanks, Renji, for having me here.
Welcome.
Excellent. Excellent. So last time we spoke, Neeraj, you mentioned that Policy Bazaar is not just an aggregator. It's supposed to be a customer experience provider. Now tell us more what all has been done under that. What sort of customer first innovations have you worked on? What has been the consumer expectation or reaction to all of that? It'd be great to get an update from you.
So, Vidya, as you rightly said, Policy Bazaar, a lot of times it just gets clubbed as an online aggregator or an online broker, right? But if you look at Policy Bazaar as a philosophy, what we're trying to drive here is how do we make insurance more understandable for a consumer, make it consumer oriented, and somehow give the trust back to the consumer that insurance is a great product and it does come into play when you really need it. And that is our core philosophy or core thesis around which we are trying to build Policy Bazaar. And similarly, in the UAE, also what we are trying to do is build products which are more consumer centric. So we continue to work with insurers, reinsurers, and create certain specific products which are market first. For example, on the health side, we see a lot of Indian population being in the UAE and they keep on back and forth traveling between India and UAE. So we've come up with a proposition which is called an NRI Healthcare, right? So you buy a medical policy which you can buy in the UAE. It covers you in UAE, but also give you IP cover in India as a cashless. You don't need any pre-approvals or anything. If you have some illness, serious illness, and you need to be hospitalized, you can just go into a hospital, show your health insurance card, and it'll work as cashless, right? And tomorrow, if you decide I want to move back to India after a couple of years, then we give you a seamless portability. So you can just transfer your plan to an Indian insurer and you can start to continue the benefits without going through the entire medical process again. Also, everything then starts to evolve for this consumer. Now, if you look at motor insurance, what we've been able to do is, or encompassing all products, we have now called a Policy Bazaar Advantage program, which is PB Advantage, right? And if I talk about specifically for a motor insurance, we have a lot of industry first. Obviously, you have that free car washes, you have priority assistance. But apart from that, the moment of truth comes when you have a claim, right? So on motor side, what we've done a claim assurance program where we handhold the entire process for claims rather than you going after the garage and the insurance company coordinating between them. That is the thing we take care of. And what we've done is we've done certain special arrangements with the garage networks where you get a priority treatment in terms of priority servicing for your car. And then you obviously have a lot more benefits, which might not be an accidental claim, but in your normal course of running and using a vehicle that you might require, right? So these are some of the things that we've been able to do.
Right.
Great. And it's good to
Neeraj, does that
diaspora.
go on with you?
So I said it's very good to tap into at a diasporic level because obviously this is such a melting pot. So going by the pain area of each diasporic level makes sense.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, now that you're involved in the claims piece, that does add a little bit more of operational work and cost to you as well. So I'm assuming this is more of a customer net promoter score play rather than.
So more than that, I'll be very honest. So what we are trying to eventually solve for is more and more consumers buy insurance and more trust builds around the product. And that is what we are trying to solve for. From a cost perspective, yes, obviously it requires some operational bandwidth and everything and some people focused around that project, but we are in it for the long term. And from a long term perspective, the most important aspect is why the consumer needs to trust the insurance in general and why Policy Bazaar then. So that is what we're trying to solve for.
Okay. Since we last met, I realize it was not that long ago, but early days of the podcast and perhaps even early days when we were not hearing so much about AI. Now, in the last few years, everywhere you see AI. And so I want to curious to know from our listeners' perspective, what are the AI tools you use personally on a sort of day-to-day basis, and for what purpose? Love to learn from a leader. And what are the tools that Policy Bazaar is using for business purposes in UAE and stuff like that?
So from my personal perspective, I continue to use Chat GPT and Gemini, right, for various aspects, for doing whatever research. I have my thoughts around some things, and I wanted to give it a finer print around how do I communicate that over an email or over a presentation. So I use these tools for that primarily. But at a Policy Bazaar level, we continue to evolve and use, because if you look at every day a new company is coming up with certain solutions around AI, right?
Yeah.
So we will continue to work with a lot of companies around that, and some are in beta testing, some are building around use cases. But primarily, what we are solving for right now is most more so from once the consumer is in the Policy Bazaar ecosystem, probably verification, audits, from a technology perspective, building stuff, right? For the technologist, my coders, engineers, marketing guys, to build certain creatives, to code, to build a platform, to get a certain UI, UX in. So those are the things that where we are using AI extensively. Obviously, we have a team around it specifically for that. But in general, what we've done is for all our technology people, we've got them those licenses, and we just are pushing them to start using it. At times, they might not be using primarily only for their work perspective. They might be using for the personal stuff, but that's okay, because you want the people to start using these tools, right? And so that is where we are. Yeah, we are extensively using those.
Got it, got it. We see some of those ads for voice solutions where this AI salesperson will call you and convert you. Then a lot of these marketing tools where you can have personalized advertisement for based on AI and stuff like that.
So we've not still gotten live with any voice AI sort of a thing. From that perspective, are we testing, piloting them in a very close group? Yes, we continue to evolve that. And the good part with us is because we have a huge business in India, obviously. So we leverage a lot of stuff from that side. So there's a lot of stuff happening on AI in the India business. And we obviously take a lot of learnings from that and try and adopt it in the UAE business. Because whatever we want to try in India, we are able to try and test it, because the volumes are such high that we are able to test it and figure out in a very short span of time.
Got it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Neeraj, in the recent past, there's been a lot of regulatory chatter, a lot of regulatory updates. Let's go through one by one and just to understand how Policy Bazaar has been impacted or is approaching it. So, obviously, earlier in the year, there was a broker regulation which required, amongst many things, that the premiums have to be collected directly by the insurer versus a broker or any intermediary. Now, how did that regulation impact Policy Bazaar's operation? How did you guys re-engineer yourselves?
I have to give kudos to my tech product and the business teams. We had almost a seamless movement, right? But obviously, what goes behind the scenes is a lot of work. Right? We worked with a payment provider, a solution where, at least from a technology perspective, we could control the integration, but the money flows always happens to the insurer. We're able to create a solution where the consumer, from a consumer perspective, nothing changes, but the money directly hits. Once the consumer confirms and makes a payment, it directly goes to the insurance company's account. It never comes and sits in our account. So that is the piece we were able to work with the payment provider and the insurance company. I'll have to give hats off to the insurance companies also, because they understood why we need the solution and they really supported us. The teams were working almost about 24/7 for that 1 month before it went live. Having said that, obviously there were hiccups and challenges, but not as much as I would have anticipated. They were a lot lower. The only thing that we are continuously working on, I wouldn't say problem, but one of the opportunities that now we still have is how do we process faster refunds and things like that, right? Because now what has started happening, because earlier what used to happen, if the broker had the money, once the insurer confirms that, okay, this policy could be cancelled and refunded in midterm, we could just process the refund amount before we could get the money from the insurance company. So now that process has become a bit longer with a couple of insurers. So we have to depend on the insurer to process those refunds because the money is now sitting with them. So we cannot process those refunds. So from a consumer experience perspective, that has taken a bit of hit. But as I said, all industry is also now considering customer experience to be of paramount in the digital scenario.
As a result of those regulations, do you see opportunities to get involved in the value chain a little bit more in terms of ownership, for example, a broking house, or you still you think you will remain a
We are
You're a
a
broker,
broker.
yeah.
We are a broker. We are registered with Central Bank of UAE, so we have a insurance
So
broking
they've
license.
got the broking license.
fully owned broker?
Yeah,
Got it.
definitely.
So what will happen is potentially some of the lower performing brokers might just move out of the market because of
See,
this.
what this has definitely done is two aspects to it, right? Earlier, what used to happen is broker would collect the money and pass on to the insurer probably a month later, right?
Yeah.
As a result, you did not very much need a working capital need because you could really ride on these premiums for some
Yeah.
time. I believe what would have happened is all the brokers which were using this money as their working capital need, although they do not have any rights on this money, this is almost a liability as far as the broker Policy Bazaar is concerned, because this is
Yeah.
insurer's money, right? I have no rights on. So all the brokers which were using this as the working capital obviously would have struggled because now that working capital has gone away because the money is not hitting in your account. So you don't have about 30, 40 days to use the money the way you want and then pass on to the insurance company. And we'll continue to see the impact, larger impact probably in a year's time.
Yeah.
Sorry, 30, 40 days in a good way, I think. I believe it can run
Exactly.
into months as well. You were
Totally,
very
totally.
cautious.
Yeah.
Good,
Absolutely.
good.
Taking on that regulation theme, let's talk about open finance as well, right? This has been going in the works for a while. Banks have now will get on the bandwagon sooner than insurance companies. What do brokers and aggregators need to do to adopt and adapt to this? What are you doing? Would love to know.
So we are obviously working with the regulator, which is NIBRAS, which is driving the open finance piece. And the way they're driving and thinking about is probably an industry first globally, right? Want to create an ecosystem where both the parties, the manufacturer, which is the insurance company, and the distributors can collaborate through them, right? So probably what will happen is eventually, once it comes to live, is insurance companies will have standardized sort of APIs and all, which will get connected to this platform, and distributors will have to just connect with this platform and get access to everything. So I believe from a technology perspective, it should become a lot more simpler and easier for everybody to consume things.
Yeah.
Now, how does the business get impacted in a long run? We will have to wait and watch. But we are very bullish on the whole setup because what it is bringing all the industry on one common platform and giving an access. The great point which we have to look and see is what becomes on the data access, right? If the data really becomes meaningful and because all the data is definitely available with Nebras or the central bank, right? If you can access that data to give consumers a better code, more accurate code, and remove the entire paper process from it, then it becomes a game changer. That is what we are hoping and looking forward to.
This should ideally lead to more straight through processing, and hopefully insurance can reach deep inside the country, right? The penetration is still not very high even here. So definitely there's.
See, I fundamentally believe is technology alone gonna help you get penetration? I doubt that. I doubt
Yeah,
that.
I agree. Yeah.
I believe what you have to work is obviously making the process more seamless, more user friendly, obviously more accessible, definitely has a role to play. But primarily, you need to create a lot more awareness on the products, right? If you look at motor insurance, everybody knows because it's mandatory and everybody has to buy it.
Yeah.
But given a choice or a voluntary products, let's talk about life insurance, right? Term life insurance. So if I talk about term life insurance, right? If you look at this country, it's a very high disposable income with very low assets in terms of the people do not have very high assets, right? If you go into the past, everybody says that people come to Dubai with a dream of saving money, but eventually they do not save too much, they spend it and splurge on it. So if you look at from that perspective, you have high disposable, high expenses, low assets. That's a prime product for you, right? From a term life perspective, because you're almost securing your future, your lifestyle. but the
Yeah.
penetration of that product is very low.
Mm.
And the reason is,
And it's not very expensive either, right? So
exactly, it's one of the cheapest product. But the reason is, I don't remember any insurance company or any distributor marketing that product are trying to explain to the consumer why is it important.
mm,
I understand the Indian diaspora still has an understanding because they consume a lot of India media. And in
mm,
an India
Yeah.
media, Policy Bazaar really upped the game
Yeah.
on educating the consumer on what term life insurance is. Why do you need it?
mm,
It's not an easy conversation to have with a consumer that, okay, if you die, your family is going to need it. It's a serious conversation at the end, right? It's not a very run of the mill
not a happy.
conversation, right? So I believe a lot the industry has to collaborate and work on is educating the consumer, and in whatever way we can, Policy Bazaar in the UAE is trying to do that. So
Mm,
over the months to come, probably next year onward, you will see a lot more focus from our perspective on educating the consumer on these very critical products.
Right. So in the recent past, I saw a lot of these consumer awareness talks from Policy Bazaar on motor. I think you've taken a lot of micro influencers
Yes,
based UAE and using
yes.
their sort of power to reach out, which is, I think, very clever for sure.
Yeah, because
Uh,
what we've realized is eventually the consumer needs to be educated and the same
yeah.
messaging needs to go again and again in multiple ways. Right?
yeah.
The essence of the messaging is the same, but the way you communicate is very different. And for us, the challenge is insurance is a serious category. How do we communicate by not a serious topic by not being so serious?
Mhm.
In today's scenario, everybody has 10 things going on. Nobody wants to have a serious conversation, or at least not consume a medium which is very serious.
Yeah.
Mm,
Right. How do you communicate a serious product? How do you educate about a serious product, but not in such a serious tone?
Serious. Which
yeah.
is why the influencers really help out because they've got
Exactly.
that
Because
power.
people already have a connect with them. They know.
Correct, correct.
So every influencer will have a particular follower who consumes media in a particular way.
Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely. Great. And talking about regulations, there's a recent one I know Policy Bazaar is quite excited about is the whole unified GCC travel visa, which is coming up soon. Now, what are the implications and opportunities you are seeing in this space for yourselves and for InsurTechs and others within the ecosystem?
See, I believe one thing will happen with the travel piece is at least the consumer who's coming here will start to look at other destinations also, right? And probably
Correct.
that is where travel insurance in
Yeah.
particular might have a role to play. We'll have to figure out because at times what might happen is you might make travel insurance mandatory before you get this visa or something
Yeah.
of that sort, right? So we'll have to
Yeah.
see how the regulatory role plays on that front. If the government mandates you need to have a travel insurance, then probably it might mandate the visa center to give it. So let's see. But in general, I believe it's a great thing because consumers will start to move around a bit. And probably some might come in and settle eventually here in this part of the world because of that.
Mm,
Wow. Interesting.
absolutely. Now let's switch a little bit to the medical and the health side. And this is something I complain as a small business owner. The cost of health insurance has grown up,
Right.
and if you are small, then you don't have the negotiation power, right? And you've seen this international private medical insurance growing as well, right? On one hand, so what ideas are there in terms of growing in this space, Neeraj? And what can we do for these beleaguered SME customers? Selfishly, from my point of view.
So what we're trying to do is obviously we've till now focused on individual consumers and we will
Mm,
continue to focus on that. But parallelly, what we are doing is we are building our teams around SME insurance, both
Oh,
on the
nice.
medical and the other lines. And as you rightly said, it's not only a phenomena of UAE primarily, but it's a global phenomena where the medical inflation is increasing at a much faster rate. And eventually the consumer who's getting insured has to pay for it, right? Insurance companies are not continue to absorb that. At some point of time, the cost is going to be passed on to the consumer. So what we're trying to do is work with the reinsurers, insurance, in creating certain products.
mm,
See, what we'll also have to do is, and I must give it to the regulator in the UAE, at least the DHA. DHA is working on certain products for certain categories right now, right? To get
Right.
figure out like golden visa holders, senior citizens on the individual level where the insurance are becoming almost unaffordable,
yeah.
and they're working on creating certain products. and probably have a diktat with the insurers that you cannot charge more than this. For example, a couple of years back, the new regulation from a DHA came about where at least on the renewal premium, you couldn't charge more than 100%. Earlier, the regulation used to be that you could charge 100% loading on every illness. So if you had two illnesses during the policy period, my premium could go up to 300%. But the regulator came in and said that no, nothing doing. You can only increase the premium by up to 100%. I do understand still 100% is a big significant amount. The reality is the regulators and the industry are working to make it affordable. See, there are two sides to it. One is the insurance company, which is supposed to pay the claims, and then there are hospitals or the clinics, which would bill to the insurer, right? So I believe the entire industry need to work together on it, because at the end, insurance companies are insuring for a particular risk which will cost you X. Now, if that cost goes up, then they'll have to build that into the pricing. Exactly. I believe what we would probably in the future look at and should look at is probably making a lot of stuff or all the coverages available right now to be optional for consumer.
Okay.
I believe that is where, if given a choice, we would want to look at it, right? For example, my parents come and stay with me for 4 months in the year. What I'm worried about is if there is a serious illness which requires hospitalization. So what I would really look for them is buying inpatient cover only. I'm not so much worried about outpatient. I believe it will eventually evolve to that level, and must appreciate the regulator is at least starting a conversation with the industry on how do we make it. They've realized there is a challenge. They've realized there is a problem. And because of that, consumers, even if they need insurance, they're not able to buy it because it is becoming unaffordable.
At least there's some movement.
Yes.
Perfect.
Oh, that's good. There's so much people coming, going, so inflow and outflow. So the flexibility in medical coverage is so key. Yeah. So since we met, Neeraj, Policy Bazaar has been signing a number of partnerships with multiple corporate houses and so on. Tell us, how is that key to creating the success story for Policy Bazaar, and what's working, what's not working, whether from a product perspective or also from a partnership perspective?
So we continue to evolve partnership from a long-term perspective. So anything that we do needs to make sense from a long-term. Typically, that is what our philosophy is. If it is right by the consumer and it's a long-term thing, we would typically do it and not evaluate it only from a short-term perspective. A couple of partnerships that we've done, as I mentioned, on the garage network side, we are working with big chains, small chains, and those partnerships are looking to turn out very well for us. Again, on the corporate side, we are now trying to partner with a couple of banks in which we could help them secure insurance for their consumers, their clients, right? So we're working on those aspects. And as I mentioned, for us, the core aspect is we understand typically on the insurance side how the consumer interacts with the product. And secondly, we understand in depth how to create a product with probably a reinsurer and insurer, right? And that is the capability that we pass on or work with our corporate partnerships. And that is where they like us to work with them. That's about it.
Got it. Got it. Now, probably one of the last questions of the main section before we go into the rapid fire is obviously our listeners are fairly interested in the region's InsurTech evolution and background. So if you were to look in your crystal ball, what sort of predictions do you have for the next wave of digital insurance innovation?
See, we've been talking about for a longest time about personalized insurance. I believe we are yet to see the fruits of it. I believe personalized insurance, if you look at motor insurance, not so much probably, but a lot of probably personalized insurance on the health side or the life side, where you're trying to underwrite a consumer's health. Basically, right? On a term life or a health insurance, what you are eventually predicting or underwriting is how is this individual's health gonna be over a period of time, right? And that is where we expect certain personalization to come in. And if you also look at majority of the consumer now have one or the other smart device which can read in some parameters or something, right? Probably how will that flow into the underwriting piece, the insurance piece, we'll have to figure out. But I see a lot of work happening on that front for sure.
Okay. So that could be the next wave to watch out for. Excellent.
Health.
And perhaps this open insurance and data sharing will help that as well.
I consider open insurance or open finance and data sharing to be almost right now. It's more of an optional thing, but eventually it will become a necessity, right? You'll need to start underwriting in a more granular level, and that's about it, right? So I consider
Yeah.
those two almost become a given in the industry. Like, for
Yeah.
example, if you look back 5 years, then you could obviously say that digital insurance is to come in, where the consumers can come in online and pay. So I believe eventually that data sharing will almost become the given in the
Like
industry.
a norm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Very good. Which brings us to the rapid fire section. And I think obviously the answers are to be expected in 60 seconds or less. And, and
Okay.
if you're ready, Vidya will kick us off.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. Awesome. What's your biggest lesson you've learned in your career?
The biggest lesson I've learned in my career is look at from a long term perspective. Short term goals are important, but do the fundamentals right. I believe in personal, professional, and every aspect of life. That is very important. And don't run after very immediate rewards and results, right? Don't
Right.
run after that. Rewards and results over a longer period of time supersede short term results and rewards.
Mm,
I believe that's one of the biggest things here.
Fab.
yes.
What's this one word to describe your leadership style?
Collaborative.
Nice.
That's a tough one. I have not been there many times. I've just been there once. But Munich was one of the city I really
Oh,
loved.
nice.
Okay.
Nice.
That was a trip I did with my brother before we both got married. It was first trip that we took across Europe.
Right.
And I
Oh,
Right.
really
nice.
fell in love with Munich, not because what the city in general has to offer, but in terms of the people there. And we could just sit in a restaurant and make up some friends randomly. It was very warm there.
Nice.
So Munich would be one place I would love to go again.
So, what's this one book or a blog or a podcast or a TED talk that you normally mostly recommend to many people?
Yeah, to be very honest, I'm not a very fan of reading books too much. Reading is always helpful, but I typically do not read too much as I would like to. But I'm typically more updated about what is happening in insurance tech, AI tools to read about it. What is happening new in AI, what is happening in health insurance in this country, or what is happening in India, or what is happening in US. So typically I read a lot, but more so on the news articles, and typically I'm updated about the world as such.
Okay.
Nice. Okay. What's the most exciting tech innovation in insurance for you?
An interesting one, yeah. Because probably when you look from the outside, then it becomes easier to say. But from inside, at
Yeah.
times you start feeling that, okay, this needed to happen. This was so obvious. So
Right.
you don't
Yeah,
consider it
true.
to be an innovation at times, right?
Yeah.
True.
Well, I believe one of the things, if you look at it, it's more to do from an outside perspective. When you were trying to buy an insurance in the old times, you would give in certain documents to a person, and he would come back after a few hours and give you a premium.
Mm,
I believe one of the biggest thing that happened to the insurance industry was that, right? I could really take a premium on my own and literally buy the product if I wanted. I believe that was the biggest thing. Rest has been very evolving over it. But fundamental move was where I could do things, buy insurance on my own rather than needing an advisor to tell me what I need. I could research on my own. And today, if I spend enough time, I can probably buy an insurance myself.
mm.
Right.
Who would you say is the most inspiring entrepreneur or business leader for you?
Yeah, for me, obviously, my mentor, my boss, Yashish has been one of those inspiring persons because whenever you meet him and work with him, we don't get to meet him often because now he's traveling a lot and I'm based out of here.
Yeah.
But you always get inspired by the sheer amount of energy that he brings in.
Mm,
He's 50, but doesn't look like that. Just the amount of energy that he has
yeah.
is just amazing. At times, I keep on talking, we colleagues keep on talking, wish we could really work as he works with so much energy, juggling multiple time zones, traveling so often, and still be able to be on the think focused, I believe.
Very good. And if you could go back in time and advise your younger self when you had initially joined your career or the industry, what would you say?
Okay. Probably one of the things would be at times to pause and think about certain things I would do, not rush into a decision typically, and be a lot more prepared. I know I have in my past done a lot of things on the just spur of the moment and not been very well prepared for things. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, perfect. What would you say is the sort of one emerging industry trend that you're most excited about?
Sort of a wearable insurance sort of a thing,
Okay.
where you almost wear a device and anything, and it just insures you on whatever you continue to do. It's almost on the fly insurance, right? You're
Mm,
paying certain premium and it is getting deducted every day. This is what
mm.
you're doing, right? How the way you're driving, how you're walking, generally what physical activity you're doing, how much stress you are in, and
Right.
generally you're just getting insured on per day basis, sort of a thing. So
Depending on your profile of activity, health.
typically,
Nice. That's it. That's a startup idea so somebody can take up. Okay. What's the biggest career or personal risk that you ever taken?
from my perspective, I always think before taking a decision is, am I going to regret not taking this decision? It might not work out very well. That's okay. But
Mhm.
am I going to be in a position and regret, wish I would have done this? So typically, my thought process of taking a decision is like that.
Mm.
If you look at from the outside world, biggest risk at that time for everybody around me was joining Policy Bazaar. Although I
Okay.
did not look at from that perspective. See, I come from a service, like my family's from a service, middle class, typical dad being working in a corporate, and for them, you joining a startup industry, and
Yeah.
that to an insurance. Insurance from a middle class perspective was never looked at a very fancy job or a very aspirational job. You typically used to associate insurance with LIC agents
Yeah.
who will probably go from door to door and everything and sell insurance. But in my head, I was very clear on the opportunity that the people and everybody looked exciting enough. I had a
Mm.
great conversation with them. And I did not want to do a 9 to 5 job, which I was doing like a typical corporate job. I wanted to do something exciting, get probably more empowered to do stuff. In
Mm.
my head, that was not the biggest risk. In fact, that was probably the biggest decision I was taking from a future career perspective.
Right.
But from the outside perspective, everybody told me, are you sure about it? This looks like from a corporate world in our times, yeah, Infosys, Wipro, IT companies looked
Yes.
good, stable, had a long term job prospect. But startup at that point of time, 2010, 11, startup was not the buzzword.
Very
And
early days.
insurance, everybody
Right.
thought that, okay, are you going to go door to door and sell insurance?
Absolutely. Yeah. It actually had a negative connotation, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
See, if you talk to any layman today, also, the moment you talk about insurance,
Yeah.
he's not gonna have a very good feeling about it. And you, okay, tell somebody, okay, what comes to your mind when you think about insurance? It's gonna be claim, somebody lying in a hospital, bad experience, you're running from
Yeah.
door to door. Those things, very negative connotation, right?
Yeah.
And I believe that is what policies are at least trying to change.
Last question. What is the kindest thing anyone has done for you?
Uh, yeah, long list of people, right? From parents to family to friends to the wife and the kid. I believe I couldn't pick out one thing, to be honest. It's going to be very difficult. My office colleagues, a lot of stuff on the, it's
What's
not
one that
one thing
sticks to
which is
you?
kindest. Multiple. Say, for example, one of the things I still remember is during COVID, right? I was here, my family was stuck in India. My
Mm.
parents, okay, being senior citizens, you get worried about them. And my mom was COVID detected, probably not so severe, but as a son, you're staying outside the country, you cannot travel, you start to think.
Mm.
And that is the time couple of my friends came in, yeah, like they just took over it. They
Mm.
arranged whatever needed to be done. Although I continue to say it was not very serious, but from your perspective, you feel, from my perspective, it felt, yeah, I wish I could be there. And our company played a huge role in this. They were there, my friends were there. So I remember that very strongly.
Perfect. Very good. And that's a great note to end this wonderful conversation. Second time, Neeraj. That's beautiful.
No, thank you, Renjit. Thank you, Vidya. I
Thank